Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleios. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Matthew. So glad you're here. We're here in a great episode in the middle of the Olivet Discourse describing the return of Christ, his second coming. Obviously an important event for those who have believed, trusting God for their salvation by faith alone in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The first coming was to bring us salvation, as described in the Gospels. And Christ, who brought salvation to the Jews, was rejected. And God, and this is controversial, of course, but how I perceive it, and many other great theologians like Schaeffer and Ryrie, who perceive that God brought in the church, giving more time to bring Israel in and his elect, also as a punishment to Israel, and until the end times, when Christ would come again. And this is what we're describing. The end times, as described in the Olivet Discourse and the book of Revelation, beginning in chapter 4 of Revelation, and here at the beginning of 24, or essentially the beginning, describe a time after the rapture. And we'll come back to that in a second. And there's a 7-year period of terrible judgment and wrath upon the church, the church is not there. Christians are not there. They're taken out of the way in the rapture, but upon the unbelieving world, after which Christ returns, which is our topic for today. So let's go to the text, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation, that 7-year period of God's wrath, of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So there'll be these signs and wonders of the celestial bodies. This is also described in Isaiah 13:10, Joel 3:15, and additional information is added in 2 Peter 3, or around verse 9, give or take a few verses. The sign of the Son of Man, we don't know what that is, but it will demonstrate that this is the Christ who's returning, unmistakably. And then shall all the tribes, this is the Greek word poli, and I think it just means people of the earth, of various races and perhaps nations. The earth will mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven and power of great glory. They'll mourn because they realize they missed it. They've been persecuting Christians and the Son of Man, in essence, and they were wrong. 31. And he shall send his angels with a great shout of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, otherwise across the earth, from one end of heaven to the other. So this will be a time that those who have believed in the tribulation, because believers were taken out of the way at the beginning of the tribulation of the rapture, that these people will be gathered up into heaven, leaving those on earth, apart from God. Now, we talked about the rapture, that this event differs from the rapture. Again, this is controversial, and some people put these events together. But again, just in a normal reading of the text, I think they are separate events. The rapture is described best in the end of 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4, last half of the chapter. In verse 16, it says in Thessalonians, the Lord himself, meaning Christ, will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and the trump of God. And so then all believers, then dead and alive, will be raised. So Christ descends, there's a shout, and the archangel, versus When Christ comes again, there'll be all these signs in the celestial spheres, and there will be a great, he'll send his angels with a great shout and gather then everybody to himself. Plus, there'll be demonstrations of power and glory and the sign of Christ. So I think these events are clearly different. There's controversy about when they occur. I think that the rapture takes the people of God out of the way of the tribulation, because we know from verses like Revelation 3:10 that believers in the church will not know the wrath of God. We are not destined for wrath. Okay, there's the victory. There's the second coming. There's the eternal life. Thanks be to God for such a great promise. Now we'll continue along with this discussion, and Matthew's going to give instructions to those people who might be waiting or in the tribulation on how to live and prepare themselves. So it's quite interesting. So thanks for joining me today. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.